In this short video, we're going to look at the Serato integration for the Roland SP-404 Mark II. On the face of it, rather a strange partnership because this is a standalone, well, it's a groove box. You can put samples on it, you can sample using it, you can loop. It's got an SD card slot where you can keep everything away from the laptop and perform. It's a bit of a legendary unit, to be honest, and certainly the SP-404 that came before it and now the Mark II have got legions of fans who are using it in a particular kind of way. And the kind of way that combining it with Serato, on the face of it, doesn't make an awful lot of sense other than, well, if you can, why not? So in that spirit, we're going to look at the integration, and then at the end we might talk a little bit about why you might want to do this. So actually integrating it's very simple. At the end of the day, this is a MIDI controller like any other MIDI controller. No, it doesn't have any decks, so you're going to be using this with the sync button and making sure your files are all nicely prepared in that way. But essentially you're going to plug it in using your audio outputs to your speakers and your USB straight off to your computer, and your computer is going to have the latest version of Serato running on it. Your SP-404 Mark II is going to have the latest firmware. When you do that and plug them in, the Serato software will recognize it instantly and you're good to go. You'll know you're in Serato mode because you'll see the little mixer here, and you can use the Control 1 knob to control the first dec's volume, the Control 2 knob to control the second dec's volume, and the Control 3 knob to move the crossfader from left to right. And you'll see there's certain other controls here that we are going to activate using the pads and so on in a second. So we're going to need to load a track onto a deck, and the way you load the tracks is by using the bank buttons to navigate your library. Here's how that works. So we're going to use these buttons here. Buttons D and E will move us backwards and forwards from the library view into the actual playlist. So on the bottom of the screen there in Serato, you can see I'm moving from using the value knob to move through the various parts of my library to, when I press E, moving into that playlist so I can look through that playlist. Now I can adjust the way I'm looking at this, the order of these tracks, by using the C button. So by pressing C, I will change the BPM from low to high, and pressing it again, the BPM will go from high to low. So now I can find a track that's in a close enough BPM to the one I've currently got loaded. If I hold down Shift and press that, then it will do the same for the song title. So you can see the songs are now being alphabetically ordered between A to Z or Z to A, depending on how often I press it with the Shift button held. So two options there, no other options for organizing the playlist that you're currently in for loading a song, but hey, that's good enough. Let's arrange by BPM then and load a couple of songs onto the deck by pressing A for deck A and B for deck B. So there's a track loaded onto deck A. I'm going to move down a track and load the next one onto deck B. Now, as with all small controllers like this, you really are going to want to be prepared if you're going to be DJing on it, which means having all your cues and stuff ready. I haven't got my cues ready on these tracks. I just loaded them randomly. You can do it. So you're going to use the keys here. And the best way of thinking about these keys is that the 8 on the left are for the left-hand deck and the 8 on the right are for the right-hand deck. They do exactly the same thing. So we've got our play pause button at the very bottom here. But we've got these controls here, which are pitch bend. You can hold down 1 and 5 to bend the pitch up and down. But more usefully, because you're probably going to be using sync, which is controlled with this button here, by the way. More usefully, these are good for quickly navigating through the track. So by holding down the Shift button, I can get to the beginning there. And I can put a cue point right at the start there. This is a temporary cue there. Now, this is a weird thing because that is not actually a temporary cue. That's actually set the first cue point on the track. It's acting like a temporary cue, but it's set the first cue point. Just utterly strange. Even stranger, this cue button here, which you would think would be the temporary cue, is not the temporary cue. This cue button here actually is the headphones cue. So by pressing that, I can hear this track in the headphones. Now, a couple of other things you need to know about that. This button here lets us adjust the headphone cue master. So by pressing that, it says here at the top C3 monitor, and that means now that I've pressed that, by turning this knob here, I'm adjusting the mix between the headphone Q and the headphone master, and you're going to want that all the way down to Q, so that when you've got that button there turned off, you don't hear the master through the headphones for that channel. Now the sync button for each side is here. To turn the sync button off again, you do that. These buttons here for each side are BPM up and down for adjusting the BPM, but also they are, if you use 6 and 8, which is the BPM minus, they will turn on and off the key lock on the software as long as you're using Serato DJ Pro with pitch and time. Now there are mappings for some of the most common pad modes in Serato, so you can press this button here to go to the roll mode, which now gives me on the left and right loop roll and also beat jump. That's giving me the top 4 pads for loop roll, and I've got beat jump down here. These are forward and back, and this is the amount of the beat jump. I'm halving and doubling the amount it's going to do here. Likewise, there is control over Serato's stems, not only switching each of the stems on and off, but also controlling the effect out on the stems, exactly the same as in any Serato mapping on any controller. It's just that they're vertically rather than horizontally, your set of 8 pads. So for the stems, you press pattern select here. Back to looping, and if you want normal loop mode rather than loop, roll and beat jump mode, then unsurprisingly we're going to press the loop button here, which will give us loop mode on these pads. But you'll see that as soon as you select one of these, you lose control of your transport, which is why the exit button flashes, which is a bit fiddly again. So I'm going to exit there, press play. And likewise, the pattern edit button will give you control over the hot cues. You can see the one we've already got set on this channel here. We can set the rest of them. They all come up in color, and you can get rid of them by pressing shift and hot cue. And finally, sub pad will give you control over Serato's built-in sampler, which is spread across all of these because the sampler has got 16 slots here, and there's various controls for selecting sample bank and output and so on. That's all available there. So why? Well, one of the interesting things about this is that you still have access to all your samples that are on an SD card in here, and you also have access to the hardware effects. So if you're someone who uses this unit to produce music with, well, you can also plug in your laptop and you can do a kind of hybrid set that way. And so it's easy enough to trigger the effects. You just press the bus button to select whether you want it to be on the left or right deck. When you trigger the effect, we'll put it on the left-hand deck there. I think really, and you can also trigger samples and so on, just like you can pretty much all the usual stuff you do on this standalone. So that's what I mean by that idea that you can play a kind of hybrid performance here. I think really that's where the value lies in this, because as you heard there, for instance, the effects are way more extreme than the stuff you get in Serato itself. And so if you want to combine, if you're used to using this unit to perform with, to play lo-fi sets, because that's the kind of genres that this sprung out of, as something people use to perform with, you can now integrate it with your Serato music. Like I say, you need to be prepared. You need to really get used to the controllers, because as with any of these little controllers, they do tend to take a little bit of getting used to when you're DJing with them. Also, there's a few things missing on the mapping, a few things I really didn't like on the mapping. There was no quick way of getting back to the beginning of the track unless you had a cue point set there. And the cue point, why on earth is it using the first cue point, the first hot cue, instead of giving you a temporary cue? And why are they using that cue button for headphones cue when it's right next to the play pause? There's a few real usability things here that just, or maybe you'll get used to them, I don't know. However, there are many little controllers like this that work with Serato. There's now another one. It's the Roland SP-404 Mark II, and this has been our first look at it here on Digital DJ Tips. If you want more info on how to DJ with Serato on any controllers, including the far more usual controllers that people use with this unit, do come and take a look at our Serato Made Easy course at digitaldjtips.com. But meanwhile, this has been Phil in the school studio saying, get good, get out there, make the moments. See you again very soon. Bye for now.